Welcome to Global One Media Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Swido. I'm speaking today with Erin Prosk. She works in a cutting-edge industry, one that we don't talk about often on this channel, and that is medical cannabis. For the past decade, Erin has been at the forefront of patient advocacy and innovation in the sector. She's the head of not one, but two Canadian companies, a clinic and research organization in Quebec called Cannabis, as well as a new virtual clinic that she has co-founded called Sora Care. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Before we get started, a note to viewers. Cannabis is legal in Canada, but that is not the case in many markets. So please respect the relevant laws and regulations wherever you may be. All right, Erin, with that disclaimer out of the way, I'm really curious to learn about Sora Care. I've used telemedicine on a number of occasions. It can be very convenient, but Sora Care is the first virtual clinic I've ever encountered that specializes in medical cannabis. So tell us, why did you start it?
Well, I think, really many medical experts will tell you that telemedicine is really the future of healthcare and as well the future of clinical trials and research. So being able to contact people in their homes where they're comfortable and reach them in every corner of the country of Canada. And, as we move globally to more telemedicine and decentralized care. So for medical cannabis, it's still a new sort of, as you say, cutting edge therapy. It's really an emergent therapeutic class. And telemedicine allows patients and caregivers and healthcare professionals all across Canada to meet with experts in an easy and accessible format. So that's what we're bringing to Canadians, is that expertise in a virtual care model.
So how big is this industry, I wonder? What's the size of it?
Well, you'll see a lot of estimates out there about the size of the Canadian medical market. We're now 5 years into legalization for recreational use as well as medical use in Canada. And what we have is a lot of crossover in these markets. So strictly, medical access, we see numbers in the range of about 300 to 400 million Canadian. This is in the range of about 250 million US annual revenue. But where the real story is in the accessibility of cannabis now across Canada in the legal market and what consumers are reporting in those sales channels. And we see estimates of 40 to 50% of consumers of cannabis are actually using products for therapeutic purpose. So they're treating, conditions like chronic pain, sleep, anxiety, depression, and even more serious, debilitating conditions such as Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's. And so there's really a real opportunity there for the further development of medical cannabis products, because there's a demand from the patient and medical community that's really not being met by the current offering of medical cannabis in Canada.
If you look a little bit closer at the industry, there are nearly 100 providers of medical cannabis in Canada, but two companies account reportedly for half of all medical sales. So it sounds like the competition is pretty intense. How do you stand out?
The difference that we're providing is really as an ancillary service. So all patients who are accessing medical cannabis need to have an authorization from a medical professional. And so accessing those medical professionals is really the gateway or the path to access those 100 different providers. And so cannabis clinics or specialized clinics like ours really are that support for patients and caregivers to find the right companies. So in many ways, we're sort of that guide to navigate the competition. And so in our sense, competition is good. It means it will bring, more innovative products that we can offer to our patients. But we stand out as providing an expertise and an independent source of information for patients and caregivers to navigate that complex system.
I want to take a look a bit at the history of cannabis in Canada. You mentioned that 5 years ago, it was legalized for recreational use. But doctors could first start prescribing it back in the late 1990s following a high-profile court case. And then restrictions were subsequently loosened several times over the past couple of decades, again, thanks to court rulings. Now it's legal recreationally. There's retail stores, proliferation of retail stores even. So I'm wondering, given that, why is there still a need for medical providers?
first and foremost, I come from the advocacy lens. I came to medical cannabis because I really see the therapeutic potential. There's real science behind cannabinoid medicines that is still underdeveloped and underexplored. And the reform of medical cannabis over time has really been driven by patient court cases and legal challenges. It's come about in a very non-conventional way, but we're seeing like clear success now of some of the pharmaceutically developed products, such as Epidiolex, developed by GW, which has really sort of opened up eyes to sort of what the potential is of cannabinoids as pharmaceutical products. And so really, access to cannabis and destigmatization is an important step, erasing, we had 100 years of cannabis prohibition in Canada, where, this was seen as strictly a harmful drug. And so, it's taken, the steps, in the policy and regulatory reform to really start to see cannabis as something that should be, regulated based on evidence. And so, coming back to the idea that initially, this is a product that taps into our own body's endocannabinoid system. There's a whole bunch of potential there for treating difficult to treat conditions. And that's really what we need to continue to focus on medical cannabis. And that's what we also hear from consumers who are finding benefits for pain treatment, sleep, anxiety. They're coming to cannabis because of those benefits. And the industry and product innovators need to keep up. And service providers are here at Sora and Santé Cannabis to support, patients to find those effective products.
So if we look at the regulatory environment, the Canadian government recently published a 5-year legislative review of that Cannabis Act. Erin, I noticed you're listed in the appendix as someone who provided input to the report. What is your biggest takeaway from it, especially in terms of the state of medical cannabis in Canada?
Right. So this is an official sort of parliamentary requirement to have a 5-year review after cannabis legalization. But you'll notice in that report, the expert panel that was appointed by the government is noting that there was really not any significant reform or improvement in the last 5 years to medical cannabis access. It's the most dense chapter in the report, and it cites challenges with research, product development, patient access, insurance coverage, the pharmacy access. There are a number of very complex issues that are raised by a whole wide range of stakeholders. So I'm confident through the work that we've been doing with this expert panel over the last year that we can really push for meaningful reform for the next 5 years of cannabis regulations in Canada to facilitate these barriers, especially around research and the discovery of new cannabis-based medicines.
So what changes are you looking for in that regulatory framework?
Well, I mean, absolutely pressing for access through pharmacy. Cannabis products right now are still considered separate from the sort of standard health product regulation in Canada. And so one of the most significant reforms would be a reclassification of certain cannabis-based products as health products that could then be distributed through pharmacies. And this would open a huge sales channel to the cannabis license holders and to patients and consumers across Canada. There are almost 15,000 community-based pharmacies that right now don't sell any cannabis-based products unless they've gone through a drug market approval. And so this means that the thousands of cannabis products are, separated from the sort of traditional healthcare channel. And so this is really what we're pushing for, and it would be a win, on all sides of the equation, including to the industry and product developers who have so far been sort of barred from accessing that pharmacy sales channel.
That's really interesting. When I was reading about this, I saw that a lot of consumers, a lot of people who are using medical cannabis products, top of their mind is price. So I guess Canada still imposes excise and sales taxes on it. And they're saying, hey, this is a medical drug that shouldn't be.
Absolutely. And that comes back to the regulation as a cannabis product first and not as a health product where, those tax exemptions exist and, the opportunities for insurance coverage are sort of more broad. So everything when it relates to medical cannabis has had to be a fight so far. So we do have a number of patients, about 10% of patients who receive some form of insurance coverage, but we have to sort of fight case by case because those insurance providers see these products as cannabis products first and not as health products. or medicines. And so the biggest impact for patients is that they are paying taxes, they are paying out of pocket, where in Canada, it's pharmaceutical medications generally covered by provincial prescription drug plans. And so this is very impactful in the clinic. We have patients who substitute opioids, benzodiazepines, very harmful medications. They successfully transition onto medical cannabis products, but they end up paying potentially out of pocket $100 or $200 a month. It can be the biggest barrier. And so it's heartbreaking as a clinician to see a patient return to more harmful medications that are covered by their insurance when products that have provided them benefits are not.
That's a really interesting example there. Don't want people to go to harder drugs or things that are worse for them just because it's more affordable. I'm curious personally, how did you get into this industry and why are you so passionate about it?
Well, first and foremost, I care about advancing access to complementary medicines and patient advocacy. Early on, I had some close connections to people who were benefiting from medical cannabis. You mentioned we've had legal access dating back to the Y2K era in Canada. And I saw the real potential of cannabis-based medicines to disrupt the pharmaceutical industry, to sort of change the way we thought about medications. And I'm very interested in sort of just continuing this push towards integration. And I think that it's also, sort of the vanguard for a change in the way that we think about plant-based medicines. And we see that now with psychedelic medicines coming through and sort of following in the tread that cannabis policy reform has created. So other complementary medicines will come through much more quickly. And I'm really excited about that and the progress that we've made.
So speaking of opportunity, if we go south of the border from where you are right now, in the United States, the Biden administration is reportedly planning to reclassify marijuana as a Schedule III drug. That would put it in the same category as anabolic steroids. And that would be a game changer for the cannabis industry in the US. It would open up banking services. It would essentially decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. If this happens, do you have any interest in expanding Sora Care to the United States?
Well, for us, we would explore any opportunity. I think the real future will be in cross-border collaboration. So Canada serving as a model of what to do or what not to do in many cases. And I would say that in the community setting where we operate, training clinicians, supporting patients, there's a lot of learning that we can pass on, as well as infrastructure, around data technology, collection of patient outcomes that can be transported or exported over borders. So we would love to be involved with virtual care providers, as well as that process of integrating medical cannabis products into pharmacy, which I think would be, the most significant change as well with the rescheduling by the FDA, is the opportunity to introduce cannabis-based medicines into pharmacies, in addition to the cannabis sales points that already exist.
Really interesting times. Some people estimate the global market for medical cannabis is set to nearly double over the next 4 to 5 years to nearly $60 billion. Absolutely fascinating, and absolutely fascinating to talk to you, Erin, about your role in the sector in Canada. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.